Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Nami Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vastutyam Vishadarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vastutyaya Shantarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Gora Hari Bo Nita Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nita Gora Hari Bo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Krishna Jai Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Krishna Jai Gaura Premi Devi Dasi. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We're going to conclude our discussions on chapter 23 of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is a wonderful work by Srila Prabhupada that is based on the authorized biography of Lord Chaitanya called the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This chapter is called Why Study the Vedanta Sutra. So we pray for blessings from all the acharyas, including Srila Prabhupada, for their mercy to understand better the teachings and instructions of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to serve him better. Om Jnanatmirandasya Ginanginashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamahyam Tadati Swapadantam Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamine Dinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtarine. I also pray for all your blessings to justice for this class. This 23rd chapter follows the conversion of the Mayavadis of Banaras, today known as Varanasi, to understanding the real meaning of the Vedanta Sutra, that is according to the personal explanations in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the sannyasis were so impressed with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation of what Vedanta Sutra really is that they wanted to hear more from him. And so they asked him to explain further, and this is how this chapter came about. So we'll chant the invocation prayer before we start reading. This is verse 18 of the first chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Glory to Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda, glory to Advaita Chandra, glory to all the devotees of Sri Gaura, Lord Chaitanya. So last week we concluded by saying that the Vedas are, of course, full of all kinds of knowledge. That's what Veda means, it is all knowledge. And the Vedanta means the end of knowledge, right? The ultimate conclusion of all that knowledge. So the Vedanta contains all the conclusion of the Vedas. This is because the Vedas is vast. We said it contains all knowledge that's necessary for humankind to make progress in spiritual life, eventually towards getting out of this material world. And that knowledge is broadly defined in three categories, which Prabhupada said last week. These three divisions, the divisions of Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, and Jnana Kanda. So basically, because of all these different ways that one can eventually get to the Supreme Lord, albeit very long and convoluted ways, people get confused. They think that those paths are in and of themselves. As Krishna says, one can get distracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. And if that happens, one actually thinks that everything is about the sense gratification, the side effects of those paths. Even trying to become one with God, it's a material desire. Right? It's the aim of those particularly following the Jnana Kanda section. But at the end of the day, it's purely a material desire. There's nothing spiritual about it. As long as one is desiring according to their false ego, as long as one is desiring for themselves, it is a material desire, even if it's achieved through the Vedas. So if one, however, pursues these paths sincerely, and one gets the mercy of a pure devotee, then they can make progress to devotional service. By following these paths, people accumulate pious activities called punya karmanan, and this is how eventually they can take to devotional service. So Krishna speaks about this in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 7, text 28. Esham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajante mam dridavitaha. So this journey may take a bit longer, but eventually they'll get there. These pious this pious results, punya karmanan, of all of the sincere activities according to the Vedas, can actually bring them to devotional service along with the mercy of a pure devotee. And then, what is the result? Well, they come to Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? Srimad Bhagavatam is the personal commentary of the Vedanta, the end of all Vedic knowledge. So after they're done with all these parts of the Vedas, and they've come to the end of it, the Vedanta, and they're fortunate enough to take a step further and come to devotional service, then that end that they reach is Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is the cream of the Vedas. The knowledge of the Vedas that is the best, the highest, the greatest, the knowledge that will take us to the ultimate destination, knowledge that is directly about Krishna. And so we concluded with these words: we can know the substance as well as the relativities in their true sense and perspective, right, through the Srimad Bhagavatam. The substance is the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the relativities are the different forms of energy which emanate from Him. So it means we can actually understand the relationship of Krishna, the absolute truth, and his various energies, right? There are three in particular, and these three energies are known as the spiritual energy, the material energy, and the marginal energy. The spiritual energy comprises, of course, entire spiritual reality, the Lord's eternal companions like Srimati Radharani. And the material energy is this material world, and the marginal energy are all the living beings who are populating this material world under the spell of material nature. So all of this knowledge is actually contained in those 4 seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam called the Chatushloki. If we remember, these 4 verses were given by Krishna himself, the Lord himself, to Lord Brahma, and the whole Srimad Bhagavatam was built up around these 4 verses. So basically, the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is actually explaining what these verses teach, which is the relationship of the Lord with his energies. In particular, of course, the eternal nature of the Lord and the spiritual and the marginal energies, how all are meant to be serving him, right? Even the material energies in the service. How one should engage in that service, and then what the result of that service is. So basically, even in those verses, there is a description of Sambandha. We always we discussed these terms previously. Sambandha is the actual knowledge of everything, the Lord and his energies. Acting according to that knowledge is Avideya, and Prayojan is the result, right, to your devotional service. So all of this is in these powerful 4 verses, and this is what the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is about. And when we were discussing the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam in the last few weeks, we realized that this is actually described in that first verse as well. We have the qualities of the Supreme Lord described. We have the qualities of the living beings who come into this world into illusion. The nature of the material world dependent on Krishna for its existence as a reflection of the reality, and the nature of the Lord in the spiritual world, the eternal transcendent abode which is free from illusion. And of course, there is a discussions on meditation on the Lord, mentioned twice in that verse, which is eventually the goal of all devotional service. Ante Narayana Smriti, the goal of everything. Srimad Bhagavatam says, to eventually remember the Lord, right? Because in that complete remembrance, that samadhi, that absorption in the Lord, we're in his presence, we're in his association, and then of course his association in love. So we see that is also the themes of Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojana in this first verse. So we can understand that when we realize all of this knowledge, we can actually be liberated. Now, this is all, of course, knowledge from the Bhagavatam, but the person Bhagavat also teaches the same knowledge. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the person Bhagavat, he came to teach us this, the relationship of the Lord and his energies in his tattva, his Achintya Beda Bed tattva, which is actually the doctrine of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. It's our core philosophy. How we are the Lord's energies, so we can actually be simultaneously one with him and different from him at the same time. This is a perfect explanation of all of the Vedic teachings. because all of their teachings are supposed to guide us to rendering service to the Lord as His servants, as His part and parcel, as His energies. Okay, so it's essential we understand the Lord and we understand His energies. We should get that from the Vedas, but we certainly get that from Srimad Bhagavatam and from those who teach us Srimad Bhagavatam, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Knowledge of the simultaneously one and different nature of the absolute truth has been imparted for the well-being of everyone. Right? These words are actually taken from the well-being of everyone, from the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, which we will read a little more tonight. Mental speculators mislead people by trying to establish the energy of the Lord as absolute. Okay, so it's essential that we understand how we are different from the Lord, and the same, but not that we can ever be Him. Right? The mental speculators, as Prabhupada puts it here, they try to establish the energy of the Lord as absolute. We, the energies, as absolute as Him. And the problem with that is, it's like saying that to be absolute, for us to be absolute, is that we are never wrong. And the reality is that because we're all living in the material world right now under the spell of illusion, we're constantly wrong. Right? The living entity is prone to all kinds of faults. Right? He makes mistakes. This is not the nature of absolute. Absolute truth, the absolute reality is always true by the very definition of it. It can never be false, meaning it can never come under the illusion of anything, because to be illusion simply means that it's not absolute, right? So it's a complete contradiction for anyone to try and present the relative truths, the living beings, as supreme, as the absolute truth, or to say that they could ever become the supreme, because at some point or the other, they were not absolute. So how can the absolute be non-absolute also, right? This is not possible. But when the truth of simultaneous oneness and difference is understood, that truth is more pleasing than the imperfect concepts of monism and dualism. So it means when we understand how we are the same as God but different from Him at the same time, this is when everything makes sense. Right? This is actually the perfect way to understand what the Vedas is teaching us, what the Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching us. We're the same as Krishna in quality. Right? So there is a truth to the fact that we are Brahman, which is small Brahman, which is not the supreme Brahman. We have the same qualities of Brahman, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. But we can never have it in the same quantity as Brahman. The supreme Brahman is infinite. We are infinitesimal. We are given our size in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Upanishads, right? We're extremely small. And under that condition, we can fall under the spell of material nature and illusion, right? Making us relative. The Supreme Lord, by His great power, never falls under the spell of His own power, the material nature. So there the difference comes in. And at no point, even through self-realization, getting out of illusion, can we ever acquire the power of His, because we simply always remain very small particles. So monism here is actually saying in another word, the doctrine of impersonalism, right? Monism is also called Advaita in Sanskrit. So it's definitely an imperfect philosophy. We can see that. Right? So dualism, though, is also imperfect. Dualism is on the opposite end of the spectrum to monism. Dualism is called Dvaita. So obviously we know they two, Advaita, not two, one. Right? So Dvaita means dualism. Dualism means that we say that the living entities, us, the soul, and the Lord are always different and completely different. And this is also wrong. Right? We understand that even though God is absolute and we come under the spell of material nature, if we are part of material nature, that means we can actually never be associates of the Lord. Right? Prabhupada explains in Bhagavatam, I think it's the fifth chapter, the seventh, I think it's the chapter of Canto 1, that Krishna is light and Maya is darkness. That's their nature. They can't exist together. If we are also material, right, opposite of Krishna, not of the same nature of Krishna, then it means that we also would not be able to exist with Krishna. It means that we actually wouldn't be able to attain Him. to have any pastimes with him. But yet the Lord promises in the Bhagavad Gita that we can come to him. Our acharyas teach us that we can achieve him, that we can have, further than just achieving him, have loving pastimes with him, right? That requires that we must be of the same quality of him to achieve his world, which is of the same quality of him, his pastimes, which are of the same quality as him. So dualism itself is also imperfect. It doesn't allow for the living being to actually attain the Lord, yet the Lord says that this is indeed possible. So we're not on the either extreme, completely one with the Lord or completely different from him. We are simultaneously one and different. This is a perfect synthesis of the philosophies of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. And of course, it's because he is the Supreme Lord and the Creator who understands all. By understanding the Lord's simultaneous oneness with and difference from his creation, one can immediately attain freedom from the threefold miseries. Miseries inflicted by the body and mind, by other living entities, and by acts of nature, over which we have no control. So, how can we get free from the miseries? Well, right now we're convinced that we are these bodies, and that everything that affects these bodies is, well, affecting us. We don't understand that we aren't these bodies at all, that we are the eternal souls within. And when we do realize that, when we understand that the body is completely different from us because we realize our spiritual nature by service to the Lord, then whatever misery can affect these bodies, and it will, because that's the nature of a material body, it's always suffering something. But whenever those miseries affect us or affect the body, it won't affect us. So this is how devotional service actually frees us of miseries. Everyone's going to suffer miseries, and anyone who tells you that they can stop it in any way by following some religious process, chanting some mantra, they're lying. So we must accept the reality that as long as we have a material body, there will be suffering to the body. But we understand that as long as we take to devotional service and we try and situate ourselves in the spiritual nature, we won't be affected by those miseries. Even if it happens to the body, we will be situated on the transcendental plane where there is none of the miseries of this world. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the surrender of the living entity unto the absolute person. Okay, so when we realize this, that we are these eternal spirit souls, we want to engage in devotional service, it is when the real beginning of spiritual life happens. Like we said, the Vedanta Sutra begins, Atata Brahma Jigyasa. Now let us inquire about Brahman. Why now? Therefore, let us inquire about Brahman. Because we've been through all of the other processes the Vedas are teaching. Through the Upasana Kanda, the Karma Kanda, the Jnana Kanda. We've been through other religious processes. We've been through yoga or anything else that is prescribed in order to achieve self-realization. After getting through all of that and understanding that there is still more, then we can inquire really into the absolute truth. Right? We've left behind all the other parts and all the other desires that motivate us, the material desires that motivate us to take to those different paths. So at that point, it means effectively that we're surrendering. We're surrendering ourselves, we're surrendering our material desires, we're surrendering our attachment, our interest in everything else, and we're solely focused on the Brahman, on the Lord, on the absolute truth. We're giving up all that has gone before, all the other parts and processes. So what does that sound like? Right? It sounds like the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, right? In Bhagavad Gita in 1866, that's what Krishna tells Arjuna to do. The Lord has explained all those processes up to that point. Right? The entire Bhagavad Gita is a summary of the Vedas. So Krishna has given all the parts of the Vedas are teaching. And then what does he say? He says, give them all up. He says, give them all up and surrender unto me. And then guess what? The Bhagavad Gita ends. The Bhagavad Gita ends with that surrender. So what follows? Right? What's the next step? Because now we've surrendered and we'll be saying, let us inquire about the absolute truth, about the Brahma Jigyasa. Now we're ready. We surrendered. We're ready to inquire about the absolute truth. Then the Srimad Bhagavatam begins. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam begins exactly where the Vedanta Sutra takes off. The Vedanta Sutra says, Atata Brahma Jigyasa, now let us inquire about the absolute truth. The next sutra says, Janmad Asyataha, let's start with the qualities of the absolute truth, that he is the originator of all. And Srimad Bhagavatam starts with the same, Janmad Asyataha, right? So Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, you want to know about the absolute truth, as the Vedanta Sutra is also beginning with. Well, let me explain about the absolute truth, the absolute person, the absolute truth in his ultimate form, the person. And immediately begins with speaking about Krishna, personality of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This, he is the absolute truth. He is the supreme person. And so after our surrender to Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam guides us about the nature of him so that we can take to devotional service to him. The surrender is made with full awareness of the devotee's oneness with the absolute person, and at the same time his eternal position of servitorship toward him. Because we can't surrender to anyone if we don't know anything about them. We have to know about the Lord. And so we are allowed, encouraged, told, guided by the Lord to inquire submissively, to ask questions to understand about him. We inquire submissively, we learn about him, we also learn about ourselves. We learn about the nature of the living entities. This is why Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching about the Lord and his energies, including us, right? And when we understand about both and we understand the relationship between both, then naturally we take to devotional service because we're convinced of the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, how we must, how he is worthy of worship, how we should worship him, how our nature is to worship him. And so taking to devotional service, surrendering to the Lord, is made very easy in that way. In the material conception, one falsely thinks himself the Lord of all he surveys. Consequently, he is always troubled by the threefold miseries of life. So as long as we think we're still the Lord of everything in this world, surrendering is going to be extremely difficult, if not completely impossible. Right? Knowledge needs to be there in order to attack that idea that we are the lords of everything. Because anybody who uses their intelligence can see that we are not the Lord of anything. The more we try to actually be the Lord, the more resistance we get. Right? The more it becomes difficult. We encounter challenges. We're trying to be the lords of our homes, trying to be the lords in our communities, our workplaces. It goes on and on and on like that. There's always a struggle to be in control. It's not easy. It's because it's not our natural position. Right? It causes, even if we win the battle to be in control, it causes karma. So eventually we're all losers anyway, because the karma is likely bad karma. And even if it's good karma, it's binding. So we're just going to come back to repeatedly suffer, or we're bringing miseries upon ourselves to be controllers, and then we're perpetuating that misery with the karma that we incur in the process. So none of it is actually for any benefit. And as Travava says, we're always troubled by the threefold miseries. There's no benefit from it. It's only misery. It's just a vicious cycle of suffering. But as soon as one comes to know his real position in transcendental service, he at once becomes freed from all the above-mentioned threefold miseries. The position of servitor is wasted in the material conception of life. In an attempt to dominate material nature, the living entity is forced to offer his service to the relative material energy. When the service is transferred to the Lord in pure consciousness of spiritual identity, the living entity at once becomes free from the encumbrances of material affliction. So let's say one does become the Lord of something, whatever they wanted, CEO of a big company. One just becomes a bigger servant to somebody else, right? Whoever is the actual boss of that company. Even if one becomes president of a country, one is always answerable to the people who put one in power. It may not necessarily actually be the people, but rather the kingmakers, as we call them. But one is never independent. Even if one is, say, even the boss of their own company, you're subject to the miseries of material nature. You have to submit to something. No one's fully in charge of themselves or anything else that they survey. Right? If they think that, it's just an illusion. So material nature will force you to be a servant, even if you don't think you are one, or you want to be more than that. It's because it's just your nature. You can't fight it. And to be a servant of material nature, in trying to be a lord of one, Srila says, is just a waste, because that servitude is not rewarded. That servitude is, well, it's given karma. Karma is not a reward. And karma is more misery and suffering. So the intelligent living entity who understands this will eventually take to the devotional service of the Lord. Because if you have to undergo the submission and the servitorship, it is inevitable in the course of everything that we do. It makes sense to do it for the Lord. You're going to have to do it anyway. If you do it for the Lord, not only does it actually is it more fulfilling, it's for your eternal benefit. It's free of karma, which is, of course, a huge drawcard, but more importantly, it's actually situating us in that consciousness where we can attain the Supreme Lord in any way, actually. Even if we appear to remain in this material world, we're actually situated in the spiritual world, right? In that pure consciousness of service everywhere is the spiritual world. So Krishna advises us, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yajhosi didati yat tapashyasi kaunteya tat kurushamad arpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So you have to eat, you have to do things, you have to give away things, you have to offer things, you have to perform austerities. You want to do all of that for something futile, becoming Lord of something or the other, and it's only going to make you a servant. So just become my servant. Just do it all for me, and I'll free you from all kinds of reactions. This is what Krishna promises in the following verse from this. This is Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 text 27. And he says in text 28, it'll free you doing all of these for me, but you're gonna have to do anyway. Do it for me and just be free of all the reactions. You live a happier life under my protection, surrendered to me, but you are assured the destination in my service, right, which is the highest aim. Over and above the Srimad Bhagavatam is a personal commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva after he had attained maturity and spiritual realization. He was able to write it by the mercy of Narada. Srila Vyasadeva is an incarnation of Narayan, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, there is no question about his authority. Although he is the author of all Vedic literature, he specifically recommends the study of Srimad Bhagavatam above all other books. So we may think, well, if Srila Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Lord, why did he just not write the Srimad Bhagavatam? Why did he need to get instructed by Narada Muni? So we also read that those who want to challenge the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam of the Lord, they question all kinds of things. And they could probably question that Srila Vyasadeva was an incarnation, and they question the authority of his Srimad Bhagavatam, the same way they even question Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an incarnation of the Lord, the same way they question Krishna, the same way they question everything. So even if they say that Srila Vyasadeva wasn't an incarnation, he received his instruction in an authorized chain of disciplic succession. The spiritual master was the esteemed Narada Muni, who is acclaimed in all the scriptures as a pure devotee, as the most exalted soul, as a great sage. Even in Bhagavad Gita, he's mentioned as such. And he comes in the line of disciplic succession directly from Krishna. So whatever words he states are Krishna's words. So the instructions that Srila Vyasadeva was following when he wrote Bhagavatam, when he wrote all the scriptures, they were coming from Krishna. So nobody can actually question that. And another point that's important here that Srila Prabhupada mentions is that he wrote it when he had achieved full maturity in spiritual realization. So if anyone's questioning his qualification to write Srimad Bhagavatam, that's also answered. Right? Srimad Bhagavatam Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparayishvaraha. Mahamuni Krite, he became a Mahamuni, right? More than just a Muni, Mahamuni. He achieved complete self-realization, so much spiritual knowledge, understanding, realization, full maturity of spiritual life. He was more than qualified to write down the Vedic scriptures. And so it says, what is the need for any other scripture, right? Srila Vyasadeva himself says that that Srimad Bhagavatam is above all the scriptures that he has actually written. So again, they try to discredit it. They try to discredit the Bhagavatam by saying that it wasn't actually written by Srila Vyasadeva, but of course, this called a Vopadev, because they don't want to accept that Srila Vyasadeva is extolling the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. If someone else is writing it and extolling the glories, then they can say, oh well. But Srila Vyasadeva, after writing everything else, is saying that the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually the best of all knowledge, the cream of all knowledge, right? The ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge. So this is the glories of the wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam. In other Puranas, various methods for worshipping demigods are mentioned, but in Srimad Bhagavatam, only worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead is mentioned. The Supreme Lord is the whole body, and the demigods are different parts of that body. Thus, one who worships the Supreme Lord need not worship demigods, for the Supreme Lord is at once fixed in one's heart. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distinguished Srimad Bhagavatam from all other Puranas by recommending it as the spotless Purana. So the demigods themselves are material. Krishna is spiritual. Everything that's about him in Srimad Bhagavatam is only about him. Right? Dharmaha projita kaitava paramo nirmatsaranam sitam. Completely rejects everything else. Right? Particularly stating all religious activities that are materially motivated. Nobody really approaches the demigods for anything spiritual, or to just love them, or to just worship them with no motivation. Particularly, their identities are even known by what they can give us. They can give us wealth, or they can give us knowledge. So because such worship is materially motivated, because they are also situated in the material world, because their bodies are also material, even if they live longer lives, or even if they don't suffer the same kind of diseases as us, they don't have the same level of ignorance as us, and of course they are situated more in the mode of goodness, but they're still material. So all the other books, all the other works that are talking about them, those works are therefore not completely spiritual. They're not completely transcendental. They are therefore not spotless. But the Bhagavad Purana is only discussing Krishna and his pure devotional service, right, which is also completely spiritual, is spotless. It's completely transcendental. There's no traces of the material energy here, meaning no traces of anything temporary or miserable or ignorant. Again, this worship is not materially motivated at all. It is rather, as 112 says, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, and only the highest truth, nothing else, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The transcendental message is received through the ears by the method of submissive hearing. A challenging attitude cannot help one receive or realize the transcendental message. Therefore, in the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, the word shu, shru, shu is used. Shu, shru, shu. This word indicates that one should be eager to hear the transcendental message. The desire to hear with interest is the primary qualification for assimilating transcendental knowledge. Right? So, as much as we're always encouraged to read Srimad Bhagavatam, we must make the effort to hear. We must be eager to hear. And this is the way to actually receive the Srimad Bhagavatam. Unfortunately, few people are interested in patiently hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but the application is difficult, right? What could be more easier than hearing? It's not like it was in the previous ages. It doesn't require big yagyas. It doesn't require a lot of money to be collected for it. It doesn't require the elaborate worship that was done, or the thousands of years of meditation. But still, it's so difficult for people to do. Those who are unfortunate will find time to hear ordinary social and political topics and all kinds of idle talks. But when they're invited to join an assembly of devotees to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, they are reluctant to attend. Right? We all have experience with this. How many people are actually discussing the Lord at this time in the world? And we said that this is due to a lot of factors, right? It depends on the mode that they're in. Most people are situated in ignorance. They cannot appreciate the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. They may not have enough piety. Right? We spoke about this Punya Karmanam. They may not have the taste for hearing. This is very important. We'll discuss a little more about this later on. They may not have received the mercy yet of a pure devotee, although we know that Srila Prabhupada's mercy is there for every living entity in this age. And they just may not be ready to make the effort. That effort is also essential. The mercy is there. The Srimad Bhagavatam is becoming more and more available across the world. The holy name is there, also available so much. But if we're not making the effort, then we don't get that opportunity to get that mercy. Or they will indulge in hearing portions of Srimad Bhagavatam they are unfit to hear. This is a problem when they do hear. Professional reciters of the Bhagavatam indulge in reciting the portions dealing with the confidential pastimes of the Supreme Lord, unfortunately. These portions appear to be sex literature. So we discussed before, quite at length, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is only speaking about the eternal loving pastimes of the Lord. Only because of our contaminated material consciousness can we actually see these as mundane activities, right, or the ordinary dealings of males and females. And this is what people take great interest in hearing. And this is why they're cautioned not to go to those portions of the Srimad Bhagavatam until we have gone through the first 9 cantos, heard it properly through from an authorized teacher, and thus attain spiritual maturity so that we can understand these transcendental and pure pastimes as they are. Unauthorized speakers about these topics are very dangerous to spiritual life. And this is, we must also be qualified hearers as well. And this we will also discuss in the next paragraph, actually. Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the beginning, and those who are fit to assimilate the messages of Bhagavatam are mentioned in the very beginning. So in the same verse 112, we've been getting some wonderful knowledge from this verse in our discussions today. The bona fide audience fit to hear Srimad Bhagavatam consists of those who have performed many pious deeds. So we return to the point that we made in the beginning. Punya Karmanan is quite essential. And what are the other qualifications? That Srimad Bhagavatam 112 states, fully pure in heart. You must be fully pure in heart. And attentively and submissively hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Then there is no possibility of misunderstanding. Of course, one would be hearing from the right source as well. And this is when we can actually receive the message of Srimad Bhagavatam properly. But any intelligent person, by thoughtful discretion, can come to believe in the assurances of the great sage Vyasadeva and patiently hear the message of Srimad Bhagavatam in order to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. So it means that even if we don't have that Punya Karmanam, if we get the mercy of a pure devotee, which is, of course, Srila Prabhupada, who is making this Srimad Bhagavatam available to the entire world, and that, of course, is his mercy. So if we encounter that Srimad Bhagavatam and we encounter the discussions of that Srimad Bhagavatam and one makes the effort, and this is actually what's really lacking is the effort. But if one is intelligent and by thoughtful discretion will hear the Srimad Bhagavatam with attention, they can actually realize the Lord as the Srimad Bhagavatam itself states and become fully pure in heart. One doesn't have to struggle through all these processes of the Vedas to eventually accumulate all this piety. One need not struggle through the different Vedic stages of realization, but one can quickly be lifted to the position of Paramahamsa simply by agreeing to patiently hear the mercy of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So we need to make that effort. If we make that effort, simply agreeing to patiently hear the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from an authorized speaker, the mercy is there. The mercy has been transmitted by that speaker from Srila Prabhupada to us. So it is available, but we make that effort, and that's actually the perfect combination. And we can receive the Lord. He can become situated in our heart, just like this this wonderful verse promises. And we can take directly to devotional service in this way. The sages of Naimisharanya told Suta Goswami that they intensely desired to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. They were hearing from Suta Goswami about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they were never satiated by these discussions. People who are really attached to Krishna never stop wanting to hear more and more about him. This is what happens then. What's the result of hearing from the right source and being qualified hearers, or getting the mercy to become qualified hearers? We develop that essential quality for spiritual life, which is called taste, right? Ruchi. This is not an ordinary thing. People think that it is, but it's not. And therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam states in quite a few verses in the second chapter of the first canto how important this is. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor. Right? Every work that we do, useless labor, if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 128. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard of Vedanta Shruti. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12. Therefore, with one pointed attention, full focus, one should constantly hear about, glorify, and remember and worship the personality of Godhead. We can only glorify and worship once we have heard. Right? We won't know what we're doing if we haven't heard. So everything actually follows. The glorification, the remembrance, the worshipping, basically the chanting, the remembering, worship of the Lord, all comes from the hearing. One should constantly hear about, glorify, and remember and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma or super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous and properly heard and chanted. So those verses were 14 to 17 from the same chapter 2 of Canto 1. Lord Chaitanya therefore advised Prakashananda Saraswati, always read Srimad Bhagavatam and try to understand each and every verse. Then you will actually understand the Brahma Sutra. So of course he can read now. He's heard from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so he's become qualified. You say that you are very eager to study the Vedanta Sutra, but you cannot understand the Vedanta Sutra without understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. He also advised Prakashananda Saraswati to always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By doing this, you will easily be liberated. After liberation, you will be eligible to achieve the highest goal of life, love of Godhead. So this is very interesting. The Lord is actually saying that even liberation is not the ultimate goal. So we remember liberation means to be detached from all material things. Still then we have to work or serve in devotion in order to achieve the love of Godhead. So the Lord explains further what he meant. The Lord then recited many verses from authoritative scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Narasimha Upanishad. First, he quoted this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's a very famous verse, it's chapter 18, text 54. Brahma bhutaha prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. When one actually becomes self-realized, what is this level of liberation that we need to achieve before we actually begin real devotional service? When one actually becomes self-realized, knowing that he is Brahman, not that he is God, but that has the qualities of God, he becomes happy and joyful, and he no longer feels any lamentation or hankering. Such a person sees all living entities on an equal level, and he becomes a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even though Bhagavad Gita is accepted by even the impersonalists, they miss this point that they want to become self-realized. But what happens after you become self-realized? Krishna says here, Mad Bhaktim. It's so clear, even to someone who's not a Sanskrit scholar. Mad, me, Bhaktim. One starts rendering devotional service, Labhate Param. Right? One achieves the ultimate level. Devotional service is therefore higher than even this Brahma Bhuta platform, which all impersonalists are trying to achieve. The Brahma Bhuta platform is when they're free of all material hankering or lamentation, and they're completely free of all material desires. And of course, they're happy and joyful, but they haven't realized the happiness and the joy of devotional service. That's still beyond them. So what does Lord Chaitanya do next? In his extraordinary supreme intelligence, he quotes a statement from Shankaracharya, the great impersonalist himself, that backs up the statement of Krishna from Bhagavad Gita. This came from Shankaracharya's commentary on Narasimha Upanishad, something they can't complain about. The Upanishad is to them more reliable than Puranas. Well, there's a commentary on the Upanishad from an impersonalist. This statement says that when a person is actually liberated, right, this Brahma Bhuta platform, he can understand the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord and thus engage in his devotional service. Right? Lord Chaitanya also quoted a verse from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 219, in which Shukadev Goswami states that although he was elevated to the liberated stage, which means he was here at Brahma Bhuta, and free from the clutches of Maya, he was still attracted by the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Consequently, he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Vyasadeva. So now it follows on that if somebody who's on the Brahma Bhuta platform can't be attracted by anything material, they can only be attracted by something spiritual, right? So they get attracted to Krishna. This is natural. Somebody who has no hankering or no lamentation can't be attached to anything material, right? This is impossible. And yet, the same person is here to claim that Krishna is material. But because Krishna is completely transcendental, these people who have become free of all material hankerings, they can immediately attach themselves to the complete transcendental nature of Krishna, the supreme attractive one. Next, Lord Chaitanya quoted another shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam 3:15-43, which deals with the Kumaras. When the Kumaras entered the temple of the Lord, they were attracted by the aroma of the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord with the powerful sandalwood. Similarly, by the Kumaras smelling the aroma of these offerings, their minds turned to the service of the Supreme Lord, even though the Kumaras were already liberated souls. It is stated elsewhere in the Bhagavatam 1.7.10 that even if one is a liberated soul and is actually free from material contamination, he can still become attracted to rendering the Supreme Lord devotional service that is causeless and unhampered by any material propensity. This is because God is so attractive, and because he is so attractive, he is called Krishna. In this way, Lord Chaitanya began to discuss the Atmarama verse in Srimad Bhagavatam with Prakashananda Saraswati. Lord Chaitanya's admirer, the Maharashtrian Brahmana, related that the Lord had earlier explained this verse in 61 different ways. Everyone assembled was very eager to hear the different versions of the Lord's explanation of the Atmarama shloka. And since they were so eager, Lord Chaitanya again explained the shloka in the same way that he had explained it to Sanatana Goswami. Everyone who heard the explanations of the Atmarama shloka was amazed. Indeed, everyone considered Lord Chaitanya to be none other than Sri Krishna himself. So we, of course, remember that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained this shloka, and we had discussed it in our discussions with Sanatana Goswami. But it's very interesting, actually, that we close on this point. The Mayavadi sannyasis think that when they reach this liberated stage, this self-realization, in particular Prakashananda Saraswati and his followers, that they become Narayan, right? They call themselves Narayan. But here is Narayan in front of them, demonstrating his extraordinary intelligence, that to even a fraction of it. He's explaining what they could probably never, or which they would never actually be able to explain themselves. They have realized this through his explanations of the real nature of the Vedanta Sutra, and now by the explanations of the Atmarama verse. He, of course, is Gaura Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's shown them what it means to be God, again, even a fraction of his glories, and it's not them. Right? It's nothing that they could actually have achieved, even at their so-called level of self-realization. So their good fortune is that they have accepted his words, they have accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they're beginning their wonderful journey of devotional service. And we pray the same for all of you, that you will also achieve your devotional service to the Lord. So thank you all so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Srimati Gaura Hari ki jai. Are there any questions or comments or anything to clarify? Corrections? If not, just try and find some nice verses from Srimad Bhagavatam to read, since we've been discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. If we're coming up to the holy month of Kartik, usually we read the prayers to the Lord by Gajendra the elephant. They're very nice prayers. You should actually get into the habit of reading prayers. They're very wonderful ways to make spiritual advancement. So the prayers of Gajendra are in Canto 8, Chapter 3. Just share the link quickly. So we can follow on database, or we can call up the page. And you can just read the English, I think, because it's quite long. Very long, actually. Let me read the English. We'll start from text 2. The king of the elephants, Gajendra, said, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Person, Vasudev, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Because of him, this material body acts due to the presence of spirit, and he is therefore the root cause of everyone. He is worshipable for such exalted persons such as Brahma and Shiva, and he has entered the heart of every living being. Let me meditate upon him. The Supreme Godhead is the supreme platform on which everything rests, the ingredient by which everything has been produced, and the person who has created and is the only cause of this cosmic manifestation. Nonetheless, he is different from the cause and the result. I surrender unto him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is self-sufficient in everything. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his own energy, keeps this cosmic manifestation visible, and again sometimes renders it invisible. He is both the supreme cause and the supreme result, the observer and the witness in all circumstances. Thus he is transcendental to everything. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead give him protection. In due course of time, in all the causative and effective manifestations of the universe, including the planets and their directors and maintainers, are annihilated, there is a situation of dense darkness. Above this darkness, however, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I take shelter of his lotus feet. An artist on stage being covered by attractive dresses and dancing with different movements is not understood by his audience. Similarly, the activities and features of the supreme artist cannot be understood even by the demigods or great sages, and certainly not by those who are unintelligent like animals. Neither the demigods and sages nor the unintelligent can understand the features of the Lord, nor can they express in words his actual position. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead give him protection. Renunciants and great sages who see all living beings equally, who are friendly to everyone and who flawlessly practice in the forest the vows of Brahmacharya, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, desire to see the all-auspicious lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead be my destination. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material birth, activities, name, form, qualities, or faults. To fulfill the purpose for which this material world is created and destroyed, he comes in the form of a human being like Lord Ram or Lord Krishna by his original internal potency. He has immense potency, and in various forms, all free from material contamination, he acts wonderfully. He is therefore the Supreme Brahman. I offer my respects to him. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the self-effulgent super soul who is the witness in everyone's heart, who enlightens the individual soul and who cannot be reached by exercises of the mind, words, or consciousness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized by pure devotees who act in the transcendental existence of Bhakti Yoga. He is the bestower of uncontaminated happiness and is the master of the transcendental world. Therefore, I offer my respect unto him. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Vasudev, who is all-pervading, to the Lord's fierce form as Lord Narasimhadev, to the Lord's form as an animal, Lord Varahadev, to Lord Dattatreya, who preached impersonalism, to Lord Buddha, and to all the other incarnations. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord who has no material qualities, but who accepts the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance within this material world. I also offer my respectful obeisances unto the impersonal Brahman effulgence. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the Super Soul, the superintendent of everything, and the witness of all that occurs. You are the Supreme Person, the origin of material nature and of total material energy. You are also the owner of the material body. Therefore, you are the Supreme Complete. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. My Lord, you are the observer of all the objectives of the senses. Without your mercy, there is no possibility of solving the problem of material doubts. The material world is just like a shadow resembling you. Indeed, one accepts this material world as real because it gives a glimpse of your existence. My Lord, you are the cause of all causes, but you yourself have no cause. Therefore, you are the wonderful cause of everything. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. who are the shelter of the Vedic knowledge contained in the Shastras like the Pancharathras and the Vedanta Sutra, which are your representations, and who are the source of the Parampara system. Because it is you who can give liberation, you are the only shelter for all transcendentalists. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. My Lord, as the fire in Arani wood is covered, you and your unlimited knowledge are covered by the material modes of nature. Your mind, however, is not attentive to the activities of the mode of nature. Those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge are not subject to the regulative principles directed in the Vedic literatures. Because such advanced souls are transcendental, you personally appear in their pure minds. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Since an animal such as me has surrendered unto you who are supremely liberated, certainly you will release me from this dangerous position. Indeed, being extremely merciful, you incessantly try to deliver me. By your partial features, Paramatma, you are situated in the hearts of all the embodied beings. You are celebrated as direct transcendental knowledge, and you are unlimited. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My Lord, those who are completely free from material contamination always meditate upon you within the cause of their heart. You are extremely difficult to attain. For those like me who are too attached to mental concoction, home, relatives, friends, money, servants, and assistants. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, uncontaminated by the modes of nature. You are the reservoir of all enlightenment, the Supreme Controller. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. After worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, those who are interested in the four principles of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation obtain from him what they desire. What then is to be said of other benedictions? Indeed, sometimes the Lord gives a spiritual body to such ambitious worshippers. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unlimitedly merciful, bestow upon me the benediction of liberation from this present danger and from the materialistic way of life. Unalloyed devotees have no desire other than to serve the Lord, worship Him in full surrender, and always hear and chant about His activities, which are most wonderful and auspicious. Thus, they always merge in an ocean of transcendental bliss. Such devotees never ask the Lord for any benediction. I, however, am in danger. Thus I pray to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is eternally existing, who is invisible, who is the Lord of all great personalities such as Brahma, and who is available only by transcendental Bhakti Yoga. Being extremely subtle, he is beyond the reach of my senses and transcendental to all external realization. He is unlimited in his original cause, and he is completely full in everything. I offer my obeisances unto him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead creates his minor parts and parcels of Jiva Tattva, beginning with Lord Brahma, the demigods, and the expansions of Vedic knowledge, Sama, Reiki, Yajur, and Atharva, and including all other living entities, moving and non-moving, with their different names and characteristics. As the sparks of a fire or the shining rays of the sun emanate from their source and merge into it again and again, the mind, the intelligence, the senses, and the gross and subtle material bodies and the continuous transformations of the different modes of nature all emanate from the Lord and again merge into him. He is neither demigod nor demon, neither human nor bird or beast. He is not woman, man, or neuter, nor is he an animal. He is not a material quality, a fruitive activity, a manifestation, or non-manifestation. He is the last word in the discrimination of not this, and he is unlimited. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I do not wish to live any more after I am released from the attack of the crocodile. What is the use of an elephant's body covered externally and internally by ignorance? I simply desire eternal liberation from the covering of ignorance. That covering is not destroyed by the influence of time. Now fully desiring the release from material life, I offer my respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Person who is the creator of the universe, who is himself the form of the universe, and who is nonetheless transcendental to this cosmic manifestation. He is the supreme knower of everything in this world, the super soul of the universe. He is the unborn, supremely situated Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme, the Super Soul, the Master of all mystic yoga, who is seen in the core of the heart by perfect mystics when they are completely purified and freed from the reactions of youthful activity by practicing Bhakti Yoga. My Lord, you are the controller of formidable strength in three kinds of energy. You appear as the reservoir of all sense pleasure and the protector of the surrendered souls. You possess unlimited energy, but you are unapproachable by those who are unable to control their senses. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you again and again. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose illusory energy the Jiva, who is part and parcel of God, forgets his real identity because of the bodily concept of life. I take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose glories are difficult to understand. So We cannot believe that Gajendra the elephant was in so much distress at this point, fighting thousands of years with a crocodile in the water, yet still he was able to compose such beautiful prayers so lucidly, so conscious of the Lord and his supreme position, of all the tattva of the scriptures and so on. So there was a happy end to the story. He was saved by the Lord from the attack of the crocodile, and he resumed the transcendental form. He was actually the king in the Dunya who had to accept the form as well of an elephant. And devotees traditionally recite these prayers during the month of Kartik. So thank you so much for patiently hearing them. If there's no other comments or questions, we will conclude here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.